Fort Ridgely State Park outside Fairfax in southern Minnesota boasts many unique features, including an authentic reconstruction by the Civilian Conservation Corps of the 1853 fort, which was the site of one of the fiercest battles of the U.S.-Dakota War.
Fort Ridgely is actually one of the oldest state parks. It was designated as a state park in 1911, and of course it was to honor the original fort that was built here in 1853, and then of course with the U.S.-Dakota War, the fact that that was such a pivotal place in what happened there. It was attacked here twice, and so the legislature deemed that they wanted to at least keep the fort in state hands. The Civilian Conservation Corps came in here, it would have been the end of July of 1934. Camp 2712. What they actually did was a lot of the groundwork. So they were doing a lot of the landscaping, and they started building some of the structures. It's interesting with the CCC when they came here, because they did things that were beyond just recreation. In fact, they built a couple of check dams in the ravines. They also built these stone benches, and they built stone picnic tables. So they did a lot of things that you normally didn't see in other state parks. There was all these young men, and I can imagine that they were always hungry, and that no matter how much they were fed, that it probably was never enough. You know, they came into this camps not having much food for themselves. They would have been here until October of 1935. Then again, like a lot of those companies, they were moved out. And then there was a period where there was nothing happening here at Fort Ridgely, and then they brought in a Veterans Conservation Corps group out of Camden State Park after they had finished working at that area. And they would have come in October of 1936, and then they stayed until the spring in 1938. And they finished like this building here, the caretaker's residence, the picnic shelters, the latrine. And then the unique thing about that company, they were the only company or camp that did a historical reconstruction, and they did it of the commissary of the original Fort Ridgely. And they were actually under the supervision of the National Park Service, and they would have also went through and identified the foundations of the other buildings that would have been at the post there. Like a lot of those military forts, they were used by the local residents. Once the military abandoned them, a lot of the materials were just taken. In fact, the commissary was used as a barn for years. The other unique thing about Fort Ridgely, it's the only state park in Minnesota with its own golf course. That was built actually in 1927. And everybody, you know, that I've talked to love playing the golf course.
Good shot.
Horseback riding is huge here, and we have a group camp area that we get a lot of horseback riders that'll camp overnight, and some will just come in during the day. And so we got a lot of trails for them to go on. And we have a really beautiful campground right down along the Fort Ridgely Creek. And then of course we offer programs throughout the year. We have a Friends of Fort Ridgely that pretty much every year bring in somebody to talk about the stars and planets. They actually do historical dramas at the amphitheater over there in the upper picnic area. And so it's really just a nice park to come and enjoy the quiet, because it is really quiet here.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.